with King Charles III's relationships with members of his family on full display at his coronation on Saturday. A royal commentator has claimed the monarch made an effort to shift the often distant dynamics within the firm early on. Russell Myers, royal editor at Lorraine, discussed Charles' relationships with his family, particularly his children and grandchildren, on the latest episode of the Pod Save the King podcast. He noted, Charles, growing up in the post-war era of Britain, was in a completely different situation to his children and his grandchildren because Britain was obviously coming out of a very dark period of war. And certainly, his relationships with his family were very, very different to the relationships that he has with his own children and grandchildren. We talk about a British stiff upper lip, and that certainly was archetypal of the war era. Mr. Myers added, Charles has really tried to break down the barriers of that with his family and to create a different feeling, certainly with the younger members. Both Charles's relationship with his father and that of his mother have been described as complicated. While Prince Philip was a military man who had little time for fuss, Charles had a more sensitive character and was often referred to as a dreamer. Their fundamental differences meant the pair were often at odds. In a 2016 interview with royal biographer Giles Brandreth, the Duke said, Charles is a romantic, and I am a pragmatist. That means we do see things differently, and because I don't see things as a romantic would, I am unfeeling. And in her 1988 book, Charles, royal biographer Penny Jr. wrote about the tension between father and son early on. She said Philip had a very difficult relationship with Charles, adding, they didn't speak to each other as normal father and son. Meanwhile, Charles's mother ascended the throne as Queen Elizabeth II when he was just 4 years old. And despite early plans to be a present maternal figure, her newfound role and responsibilities meant she had less time to dedicate to child-rearing. Don't miss. Charles will revert to rebel prince after he ramps up modern monarchy. Insight, King Charles Ives' staggering income beats all other world leaders. Latest, and tipped to play more prominent role under Charles's reign. Exclusive, according to Kitty Kelly's The Royals, any idea of a family in the normal sense was knocked on the head by the Queen's accession at such an early age. She mentioned the Queen and Philip returning from their 1953 Commonwealth tour. Charles had not seen her for 6 months, so he raced on board the Britannia to welcome her home. He ran up to join the group of dignitaries waiting to shake her hand. When the Queen saw her young son squirming in line, she said, "No, not you, dear." She did not hug him or kiss him, she simply patted his shoulder and passed along to the next person. In the early 90s, Charles opened up to his biographer Jonathan Dimbleby about his often distant relationship with his mother. He had granted extensive interviews with the journalist and author for the book, which painted his parents as remote and unfeeling. Observing friends were also frustrated by the failure of the child's mother to intervene by protective word or gesture, Mr. Dimbleby wrote. She was not indifferent so much as detached, deciding that in domestic matters she would submit entirely to the father's will. King Charles and Queen Camilla shock royal fans with live appearance on US TV. King Charles III and Queen Camilla have made a surprise appearance on American Idol following the historic coronation held last weekend. The royals were welcomed onto the show by Katy Perry and Lionel Richie, who both performed at Sunday's coronation concert. However, his relationships with his mother and father bettered over the years. The divide between Charles and Philip faded away, with their similarities taking precedence over their differences. They were both artists, they were both fascinated by wildlife, the Navy and young people, Ms. Jr. told ITV News in April 2021, shortly after the death of the Duke of Edinburgh. All the while, Charles's bond with his mother was softening. According to royal biographer Sally Bedell-Smith, the warmth between the pair was unmistakable. Writing in her biography of the King, Prince Charles, The Passions and Paradoxes of an Improbable Life, Ms. Bedell-Smith wrote about the 2016 documentary, Elizabeth at 90, a family tribute, which Charles had helped spearhead. The most affecting segments showed Charles and his mother, side by side, in an ornate palace drawing room, she wrote. As they lit up with recognition of long-ago memories, her mental acuity on full display in her quick and accurate recollections, they chuckled and chatted. The warmth of their relationship was unmistakable. King Charles welcomed his own children in the early 80s, with his first wife Diana, Princess of Wales. He had two sons, Prince William and Prince Harry. Much has been said about Charles' relationship with his children, most notably by his younger son Harry, who has spoken candidly about growing up with the then Prince of Wales as a father on multiple occasions. Differing from Mr. Meyer's assertion that Charles tried to break down the barriers of distant royal relationships, Harry has claimed his father followed in the footsteps of his own parents, treating him and William the way that he was treated. In May 2021, during his Apple TV Plus series, The Me You Can't See, Harry said, "My father used to say to me when I was younger, he used to say to William and I, well, it was like that for me, so it's gonna be like that for you." That doesn't make sense. Just because you suffered, it doesn't mean that your kids have to suffer. In fact, quite the opposite. If you suffered, do everything you can to make sure that whatever experiences, negative experiences that you had, you can make it right for your kids. Tension still exists between Charles and his younger son, yet both are reportedly willing to make amends. During the Duke's sit-down with Tom Bradby in January 2023, he said, "I would like to get my father back. I would like to have my brother back." Charles's elder son William has offered a warmer recollection of his childhood relationship with his father. Speaking during ITV's When Ant and Dec Met the Prince, 40 Years of the Prince's Trust, the Prince of Wales recalled his time at Eton College, explaining despite his and his father's geographical distance, Charles made an effort to keep in touch. His writing in his letters is notoriously difficult to read, but as it gets later in the evening, it's about 12 when Hess writing letters, we can tell instantly. When Hess falling asleep you get these long sort of as that disappear off the page, William said, later revealing he and Harry would swap letters and read each other's. Charles' relationship with William is said to have grown stronger in recent years. Gil Knappett, a royal author and biographer of the King, told the Pod Save the King podcast earlier this year that the father and son are incredibly close. William has also offered insight into Charles's role as a grandfather. The King has 5 grandchildren, the Prince and Princess of Wales's children, Prince George, 9, Princess Charlotte, 8, and Prince Louis, 5, and the Duke and Duchess of Sussex's children, Prince Archie, 4, and Princess Lilibet, 23 months. The Prince of Wales described Charles as a brilliant grandfather in 2018. And speaking of his role himself, the King previously said, "It's a different part of your life. The great thing is to encourage them. Show them things to take their interest. It is very important to create a bond when they are very young. Meanwhile, Queen Camilla has commented on how great he is as Grandpa Wales, the nickname given to him by his grandchildren before he became king. He will get down on his knees and crawl about with them for hours, you know, making funny noises and laughing, she told BBC. Of course, he is able to see more of George, Charlotte, and Louis, who all live in the UK with their parents, as well as Camilla's grandchildren, who the king is also known to be close to. While Archie and Lilibet, who live in California, have less opportunity to bond with their grandfather. Charles got the chance to reunite with his grandson Archie during Queen Elizabeth's Platinum Jubilee in June 2022. It was a fantastic visit. The prince was delighted to see his grandson and meet his granddaughter for the first time, a royal source told People. Noting Charles had not seen his grandson for a bit of time, the source added, it was very special to have some time with him. He hadn't met Lilibet, his granddaughter, and so to meet her for the first time was very emotional. It was a wonderful thing, the source continued. And at his coronation last weekend, Charles paid special tribute to his grandchildren. While George played a central role as one of the monarch's pages of honor, Charlotte and Louis had front-row seats at the historic ceremony. Then, during a private lunch after service, the king reportedly raised a glass to toast Archie's 4th birthday.